This timeline of Iran being a few weeks away from a nuclear bomb is in direct contradiction to CNN's reporting. According to U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran is 3 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they wanted to. So the facts on Iran getting a nuclear weapon do not bear out the claim at the heart of what has put the world on the verge of world war. It only set back the Iranian nuclear program by months. We got to call it like it is. It's a big deal.
As per usual, CNN and the mainstream media continue to deny the objective success of Trump's recent moves in the Middle East. Ironically here, from both perspectives, whether that is the success and effectiveness of Trump's recent strike on the Iran Fordow nuclear facility, or on the flip side, his ability to do that without triggering a wider war or conflict in the region, they simply do not want to give him credit for any of it. And recently, of course, we covered the timeline in which CNN was, as one example, trying to deny the fact that there was a ceasefire agreed upon between the US, Israel, and Iran to end the so-called 12-day war. Of course, CNN later had egg on their face after Iranian officials confirmed to the public that no, Trump was not lying. No, indeed, there was this agreement brokered upon, and CNN was trying to claim first that that was not true. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the brand new story that is once again falling apart. It's like literally within the span of 2 to 3 days, they have to be taught the same lesson twice here, because today we got to bring you the update on this supposed story you might have heard where so-called anonymous Pentagon officials, right? U.S. intelligence is claiming from insider sources here, this is what the New York Times is saying, what CNN is saying, that the Trump strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend were unsuccessful, right? They're saying Iran moved their uranium, or the bombs barely penetrated the facility. As you can see, this is basically, we'll get into the full coverage here, but this is the basis of the story, right? We have breaking news into CNN. 3 sources tell CNN that according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment, again, that is not actually named, the U.S. military strikes, according to rogue officials in the Pentagon, on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back a few months. And here's the thing about this that I called basically from the beginning, is usually you can chalk these types of stories up to the normal Trump derangement syndrome, right? They just want to not give Trump credit for anything. But in this case, I said the opposite. I actually think there's something much more sinister here going on, which is, as we so often covered, the neocons believed that a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities would not be the end of it. In fact, John Bolton has now said this publicly. Their agenda was always regime change in Iran, and they're kind of frankly flabbergasted that Trump managed to do that, take out Iran's nuclear facilities without getting us into an Iraq War 2.0. And so to me, as I stated here very early on, I said, this is not just anti-Trump bait. This is obvious, yes, deep state propaganda to basically get us back into the war, right? Get us, now that we basically left the situation, we made peace, we got off the table, we achieved all of our objective goals. They said, no. They wanted to use this again to justify continued involvement, regime change, and a forever war being fed by, as CNN is saying themselves, those very deep state bureaucrats within the Pentagon. They want any excuse to keep us in this war, hence why they're willing to lie about it. No, these strikes did their job. We're done. It's over. And going on with that theme here, by the way, again, their only source here, they won't report it, they won't claim who, it's just like anonymous officials in the Pentagon are saying this. Again, I wonder why, I wonder what their motive might be of those deep state bureaucrats to be lying about this type of stuff to the media, right? If not to A, sabotage the Trump administration, and B, again here, try to justify more involvement in more war. But it is worth noting ever since that now the International Atomic Energy Agency, right, the IAEA, which is considered to be the sort of objective neutral gold standard in this regard. They, by the way, were correct about 2003, saying there were no WMDs in Iraq, for instance. Well, they are reporting here that Trump's strike on Iran's nuclear weapons facilities were actually in contrast to what the Pentagon, quote-unquote, anonymous officials here are claiming, as well as what the Trump administration and Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense is officially claiming. Again, anonymous sources here versus not only the public stance of U.S. intelligence. You could say, okay, that's propaganda. But again, IAEA here saying the same exact thing, that they were the strikes on the nuclear facilities were more devastating than first appeared. The report refutes the leak from disgruntled deep state leakers to CNN that the strikes had failed. The IAEA confirms the enrichment areas and storage rooms were indeed destroyed. Very interesting, right? Well, in today's video, I want to give you the full timeline and breakdown on how CNN was basically trying to run this story yesterday. Now today, at the NATO Summit that Trump is currently attending, he had a little bit of a standoff with Kaitlins on this very subject, and then it goes to Pete Hegseth, where he utterly demolishes this absolute lie that, again, these strikes were not effective, aka, hey, let's restart the war with Iran. I wonder why they want to do that. So we'll get into all of it. But first, though, folks, I do want to say that if CNN throughout the years has not managed to put you to sleep, before we get into it, we have a brief and timely message from today's sponsors. Again, if CNN doesn't do the job enough, take a listen. A lot of us struggle to sleep these days between cell phones, computers, and those of us like me who have to look at LED lights for a living. But you know what's unfortunately been covered up? The dark side of melatonin supplements. Since melatonin is a hormone, if we take too much of it, then our body stops producing it naturally. Additionally, studies have shown that kids who have chronically high melatonin don't go into puberty until a very late age. Why? Because melatonin suppresses puberty and messes with testosterone levels. To give you an idea, if you give melatonin to a male Siberian hamster, its testes go from the size of a marble to the size of a grain of rice within a week. Thankfully, there is hope. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist and tenured professor at Stanford University, recently revealed what he calls his favorite sleep cocktail.
My favorite sleep cocktail, based on really good, solid, peer-reviewed science, is magnesium threonate and something called apigenin, which is basically a derivative of chamomile. Those two things work really well. They essentially shut down the forebrain thinking, anticipating part of your brain, allow you to drift off into sleep really well.
Oh, I need that all day then, if you shut that down.
You know, theanine is the third thing in the cocktail.
Isn't theanine, that is also a nootropic?
So theanine also turns on what's called the GABA system. It's like an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it helps suppress anxiety and kind of turn off thinking. It helps you make the transition into sleep.
Let me write all this
Sure thing.
because I think I do need this.
These are a game changer. I'll be amazed if it doesn't help.
Black Forest has created a supplement that contains all of these ingredients and more. They are calling it SleepX, and it takes advantage of the latest cutting-edge science to help you not only fall asleep, but stay asleep naturally. Forget about destroying your ability to fall asleep with melatonin or using Big Pharma's dangerous and addictive sleeping pills. I've been using this for a while now. In the racing mind, it is gone. Sleeping is delicious. And let's be real. We need to be strong, mentally sharp, and in peak condition. No one's going to take care of us but us, and that's why we need to have rejuvenating sleep, which is hard to get these days, where we can rest and charge up for a world that is constantly trying to break us down. So here's the deal. I've worked out an exclusive offer with my guy at Black Forest Supplements to hook you up with a 40% off deal for the next 48 hours, but this stuff always sells out, so don't wait. Take advantage of this launch day deal, since they said it is never going to be this cheap ever again, at the link at blackforestsupplements.com/Vince down in the description and the pinned comment. Okay, and with that said, let's now go through the full timeline. We basically introduced the topic. Hopefully you understand by now. But from yesterday's reporting to where we are now. So again here, guys, recapping here. Yesterday, CNN is disclosing so-called quote-unquote top secret information on live TV, claiming that the strikes on Iran left their nuclear facilities largely intact. Okay, so here you go. Take a listen, and then we'll show you how this claim has utterly fallen apart by these warmongering deep state actors. I'm going to say that over and over again. It's not just about going against Trump. It's about justifying more war. But take a listen.
It was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it is worth noting that it is a very early assessment. The strikes were only a matter of days ago, and the intelligence community is still gathering intelligence. They are still working to come up with a full, comprehensive picture of what exactly happened here. But based on a battle damage assessment that was carried out by U.S. Central Command, essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged, the Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months. Now, we presented this information to the White House for comment, and White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, she did acknowledge the existence of this assessment, but she said in a statement that the administration disagrees with it. She said, quote, "This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets, total obliteration." Now, it is worth noting here that there has been dissent, I should say, within the intelligence community, within the defense community, about just how much of an impact these massive bunker buster bombs would actually have on Iran's nuclear facilities. It was far from certain, given that these bombs had never been tested in an actual combat scenario, whether they would actually penetrate those very, very deep underground tunnels that lie underneath these nuclear facilities. And what we are told is that as of now, this Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, it does conclude at this point, again, it is still very early, that those underground facilities, including the centrifuges, including the highly enriched uranium that everyone has been talking so much about, those are largely intact.
So again, I reiterate, to me, it was clear the entire time. That's the deep state trying to say, no, it's the WMDs in Iraq thing all over again. No, we didn't do the job. We got to keep fighting. Again, because they are shocked here. What they were hoping for, Trump to get us into Iraq 2.0, didn't happen. And so they're saying, no, we have to go back. No, we left something behind. Wait a minute. They just want an excuse to stay there. I'm surprised not everyone can see through that. But if you don't believe me, if you want to say, okay, maybe, they're telling the truth, who knows? It's basically between the warmongering Pentagon and corrupt deep state versus the Trump administration. Who do you want to believe there? I again go back to the fact, okay, let's ask a neutral arbiter. Let's ask the International Agency of Atomic Energy to basically figure that out for themselves, okay? And so we now have independent agencies not agreeing with the Pentagon, but agreeing with the Trump administration, indeed, that this situation was successful. So with all of that in mind, today, Kaitlins, the obnoxious individual herself who has run nothing but nonstop propaganda basically for the war lobby throughout this entire situation here, about that very question of, hey, our reporting, our anonymous sources, whatever here, our leakers in the rogue deep state are saying that, oh, we need to go back into Iran. We have more problems. We were not successful, right? And take a listen here as Trump goes back and forth with her at the NATO Summit, because it is truly a spectacle to witness, again, on this greater question of, were the strikes successful or were they not?
Please, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, fake news, CNN?
I'll hold it.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Wait till you hear this question.
Thank you, sir.
You should really say how great our soldiers and our warriors are.
I think everyone appreciates our soldiers and our warriors. I do have two questions for you, Mr. President. You just cited Israeli intelligence on these attacks. Earlier, you said U.S. intelligence was inconclusive. Are you relying on Israeli intelligence for your assessment of the impact of the strikes?
No, this is also Iran made the statement. And it's also, if you read the document that was given, that Pete can talk about if you'd like, the document said it could be very severe damage. But they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Okay.
So again, we have here independent agencies. Apparently, Israeli intelligence, according to Kaitlins herself, is saying that the strikes were successful. Now, I would note there, on the front of Benjamin Netanyahu, that there has been tension between him and Trump as of late. Okay, largely, as I explained before, the reason here is that Netanyahu wants a regime change in Iran. He basically wants the U.S. to get more involved. He's been lobbying, essentially, for the U.S. to overthrow the Iranian regime for decades now. He was a supporter of the Iraq War, etc. So it's very interesting to me, actually. He is the type of person who might want to say we were not successful in order to justify more war, more involvement, because again, that's what he wants. That's basically what he's about. So it's worth noting here, even he is saying that. The Iranians even have basically said the same exact thing. So it really begs the question, why are you taking these supposed 3 Pentagon officials, anonymous, whatever, in the government so seriously? Similar situation, by the way, to when they were trying to believe Iranian state media over Trump himself by saying, hey, there was a ceasefire, we agreed upon it, and CNN was saying, no, there wasn't, no, there wasn't. And hours later, they have to say, oh, wait a minute, there was. Okay, Trump's not just making stuff up. Again, guys, it is utterly just ridiculous here. But if you want to keep on not believing me, and by the way, isn't it funny, too, that CNN, as we played in the opening clip, before the strikes, were saying, oh, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. And then suddenly now it's like they are building a nuclear weapon, and they're doing such a good job of it that the strikes were not effective. Again, it's just so transparent here. But take a listen as Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, further explains here why CNN, New York Times, etc. are all completely wrong about this in his own words, according to the intelligence. Apparently, he is claiming. Take a listen.
For a tactical reason with President Putin.
Let him answer this.
Hello, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment, you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordow, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that drop the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran. That's why they came to the table right away, because their nuclear capabilities have been set back beyond what they thought were possible.
What an important statement, right? Leakers have agendas. Again, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of it, because the moment that I saw this story, I immediately rushed. Okay, I showed you right there. I knew what was happening here. Again, this is the war lobby in our government trying to get Trump to, hey, you gotta go back, right? Hey, you forgot your keys behind, you know? This type of thing. Furthermore, as is appropriate here, by the way, because yes, serious crimes, treason arguably against our government has been committed here, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is further announcing a criminal investigation into whoever is feeding this bad intel, right? By the way, leaking top secret information, low confidence reports there to CNN and the New York Times, saying that the FBI has already gotten onto it. It really appalls me and shocks me that after the Mike Waltz situation and, you know, stuff you saw even before that with the CIA, John Ratcliffe, all that, we still have people in the Pentagon, even after Doge fired people too, by the way, we still have the bad actors in the Pentagon trying to mess around with this type of stuff. But nonetheless, hopefully we can identify, yes, it is very important. Who are the anti-American traitors? And that's exactly what they are, by the way. Who, by the way, their motive too. Their motive is literally they want to push war. So you're really talking about the most despicable people in our entire freaking government. Okay, open traitors. Like I'm using that word completely. Because not only is it just a matter of fact that that's what they're doing, but the motive here, how sinister that is, they want to send American kids into yet another forever war and make the taxpayers subsidize and pay for all of that, for their corruption, for their special interests or whatever. Insanity. Sinister, sinister people you're dealing with here. Want to make that very clear. They should not be trusted, okay? Oh, this, anonymous Pentagon official is saying that the U.S. needs to go back into war. Anytime you hear that, you should not believe these absolute evil scumbags. That is just the truth. That is just the truth, okay? Anyways, nonetheless, take a listen here as Hegseth is announcing that there's going to be that investigation. Hopefully, it's not another empty one, because this is something you truly need to get to the bottom of. Who in the Pentagon is leaking state secrets? And by the way, is it just the CNN? Is it just to the media? How do you know it's not to other countries as well? I don't know. Good question.
Pete, do you have something to say about that?
Well, Mr. President, when you talk to the people who built the bombs, understand what those bombs can do, and deliver those bombs, they landed precisely where they were supposed to. So it's a flawless mission.
Flawless.
Right down where we knew they needed to enter. And given the 30,000 pounds of explosives and capability of those munitions, it was devastation underneath Fordow. And the amount of munitions, 6 per location, any assessment that tells you it was something otherwise is speculating with other motives. And we know that because when you actually look at the report, by the way, it was a top secret report, it was preliminary, it was low confidence. All right, so this isn't, you make assessments based on what you know.
They don't. It said it could be very devastating, very serious.
Moderate to severe, and we believe far more likely severe and obliterated.
Is there a leak investigation?
Is
there a leak investigation?
Of course, we're doing a leak investigation with the FBI right now because this information is for internal purposes, battle damage assessments, and CNN and others are trying to spin it to make the president look bad when this was an overwhelming success.
Can we finally put to bed the narrative, by the way, that Pete Hegseth was ever an unqualified Secretary of Defense? Okay, because just on a pure matter of the actual things he's done, these strikes against the Houthi rebels were extremely successful, and by the way, so is this one. Okay, so it turns out you do not need to be one of these like 4-star generals or admirals to be leading the military. I don't know, just something to think about there. And I thought it was clear, frankly, the moment that Signalgate happened, after Hegseth was, trying to actually restrain the United States in terms of some airstrikes, war policies, and all that stuff, that full confidence, frankly, here. And there's a reason why even still to this day, you have rogue Pentagon officials, as you can clearly so often see, trying to sabotage him, and hopefully they're not successful in the end. Nonetheless, Donald Trump now has put on a new statement on Truth Social here saying, quote, "We just caught the failing New York Times working with fake news CNN cheating again." In the story we covered, of course, earlier, they tried to demean the great work, yes, our B-2 pilots did, and they were wrong in doing so. These reporters are just sick and bad people. You would think they'd be proud of the great success we had. Instead of trying to always make our country look bad, a total obliteration. And that is, of course, true. Why is it? Because the mainstream media nowadays, especially the corporate media, as they're so often called, represents the same exact interests currently in the Pentagon who are trying to push that new war. And so CNN is basically in this weird position, as you saw from the flip-flop, by the way, on like, oh, we shouldn't strike Iran, Trump is bad, oh, but Trump now was unsuccessful in the strike on Iran, whatever, all this stuff. Is that essentially, right, they are trying to balance their Trump derangement syndrome with their corporate interest to start a new war, and that's exactly what you're seeing right now, okay? They might as well be called the Neocon News Network, okay? NCNN, there you go. But anyways, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts about this whole story in the comment section down below. I mean, do you agree with my assessment, right? This is literally just an agenda by the warmongers. There's a reason this is all being pushed. Or are you on the side of the intelligence community? Maybe you think, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe the Trump administration is lying. Again, guys, here, I think it is so transparent, frankly, what is happening. And, that's the agenda that they're trying to push. We've seen it time and time again, by the way. And especially the moment I saw, right, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, right, they're saying, nope, Trump is right. Israel is saying Trump is right. Again, Netanyahu not really a fan of, like, Trump pulling out of the situation, but even he's saying it. Iran is saying it. I'm not going to believe some freaking deep state bureaucrats. I'm sorry, I'm not. But let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.